Welcome to the Nurture Culture podcast. My name is Iris Sullivan Dare, and I'm here with the beautiful Ginger Edwards. And this is the podcast where we meet in the middle, the big messy middle, where all the action is.
You. Hi, Iris. How are you?
I'm good. I'm going to try to arrange my lighting a little bit.
Should we start with our question of the podcast, which is, what are you nurturing right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like you to go first.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, it's so funny because by the time when this is airing for folks, I will be in Texas, hopefully experiencing the total solar eclipse in totality, which is so exciting because I don't think I've ever actually seen that, or if I have, I don't remember. I was too young to remember like the real deal. So I'm going to a big festival called the Texas Eclipse Festival outside of Austin. And I don't know, at age 50, it feels completely hilarious to me that I'm going to I'm packing all these costumes and, glitter tattoos and a cowboy hat and all my camping gear. And
I'm so psyched.
Yeah. So hopefully it's supposed to be a major party. So I am nurturing a lot of excitement. And I realized as I was doing that I've never taken a spring break like in my life. I just missed that whole American phenomena because I've been self-employed since I was like 19, and I worked even before that as a high school student. I just didn't have it just wasn't part of my thing, like I never even allowed it to be a reality of like, oh, I'm going to take this trip. Yeah. So all of a sudden I'm like at 50, I'm actually like going to a festival with a friend. Like I'm taking a legitimate spring break, which is it feels weird. It feels exciting though.
I think that's super funny. I always love how there's like little parallels because last week was Clatsop County spring break.
Mm-hmm.
And since my husband is employed at the school district now, he had the week off. So we didn't go anywhere, but we realized, oh, we've never done this before.
Yeah, isn't that
Because
weird?
yeah, I mean, because the bakery was always like super busy
Mm-hmm.
because everybody else was doing it. So we had to feed them.
Exactly.
So
That's
and
exactly right.
so it's very, yeah, it's an interesting parallel. I'm so psyched for you for this trip.
Thank you. Yeah. And also I realized I have not farming this year for the first time in 15 years. I'm not trying to grow a commercial crop for something. And so I don't have all these little babies in seed trays, like worrying. I mean, to take, a 10-day trip in April would just not even been a reality in my head, up until this moment. So it's just a moment. And I'm nurturing this excitement and just like the kind of wonder of like, where has this freedom been? I don't know. I'm allowing myself a new level of freedom and play right now at 50 that I haven't for a really long time. And it's cool. It feels like a turning point. And it's a solar eclipse. So I guess it's like, mystically aligned with this eclipse.
Well, I mean, absolutely. But also, like, what one of the things you said is that it was absolutely not part of the sample space for you.
Yeah.
Until this moment. Like,
Yeah.
it would have been inconceivable. Like, you wouldn't even have been like, oh, it wasn't like you were like desperately missing it. Because it was like it was like missing going to Mars or something.
Yeah, that's the thing is like when we have this certain life and like this certain mindset of what we're doing, like these whole realities, like learning to snowboard was another one for me. Like, oh, people do this. Like it was like a world that goes on that you don't even allow yourself to think about or don't even think about because it's just not connected to your reality. And this spring breaks a new one. It's like, oh, people do this.
Oh,
Cool.
I'm so psyched for you. It's so great.
So what about you?
So I do have a bunch of little plant babies. And I have a friend who has a farm. I've grown down at your farm in prior years, but I have a friend across the river here that has a farm, and he's doing some construction, so he's not farming as heavily as his norm is, and so he's giving me as many 100-foot rows as I want.
This is Fred now. Let's name him.
Let's
shout him out.
Oh yeah, Fred Johnson of Fred's Homegrown.
Who's awesome, by the way.
Who is amazing and lives in Nassau, Washington. And I've known for many years. And so anyway, so I'm going to have 100-foot row of indigo,
Woo!
which is, I've had 3 30-foot rows before.
Mhm.
So, and I'm trying to decide, I'm going to do a row of pollinators for him. So that are also dye plants. So I'm going to have 200 row feet. So I actually have a whole bunch of plant babies right now.
Yeah, you do. That's exciting.
Yeah. So that's really lighting me up. And also since we talked, I've had 2 opportunities like emerge that I'm going to take advantage of. And one is the really sweet little school that's really nature based that is hiring me to come once a week next fall for the school year to do art with the kids. So kind of similar to what I'm doing now, but in a way different setting and closer to my house. So without the 40-minute drive. So that's super exciting.
Yeah.
And then I've just put in a proposal today at their request to an art center up in Port Townsend. So I'm super excited about that too. I had the most amazing conversation with the education director, and I was like kind of out of nowhere. And it was, but all of these are the thing that's making me think about is both of those opportunities were directly because somebody I had impacted was like, you know who I would like, or you know who I suggest, or you know who I recommend. And so a couple of my students had recommended to the Port Townsend person, and somebody I've known for a long time suggested it to the school. And so it was like the benevolence that's working on your behalf that's completely invisible to you. Like and so I'm really like feeling into that gratitude like hugely about like, wow, you know, it's like you don't even know how what you're doing is impacting others and how that will come back to you. And
I love it.
so anyway, that's all mine. And the weather is nice, and I
know the weather's very healing. When the sun returns to the Oregon coast, our moods just like shift. It's dramatic.
it's like, it's totally, I think we're literally solar powered.
Absolutely. Of course we are.
I mean,
this is a good conversation for the eclipse. Yes, we are 100% solar powered on this planet. Planet would not exist without the sun.
But I mean, like, I think our bodies, like, it's so,
100%.
Oh, you're like, no question.
I mean, think about it, like everything a sun nourishes, we eat. I mean, like it's all the caloric intake, it's all from the sun. None of it would be possible. So yeah, we're 100%. And not only that, but just like laying in the sun, you could feel it. You could feel how healed you become and like how energized, and how your body chemically just starts to fire off different things in the brain, like that are happier. The mood lifts. But I was going to say, like what you just mentioned about how these opportunities have come from other things that you've done, people you've influenced. And recently I heard someone say, that the stop chasing, like even if you have a goal, like don't think of the goal like out there that you have to go get, like, and this is really tied into what we're going to talk about today, but like become as present as you can in yourself in the moment and let that goal move towards you. Like allow yourself to receive it because it's coming towards you. As soon as you have an idea or an intention, like you've created a cord of attraction to this thing. So just get really present and grounded and become fully receptive to this thing that's moving towards you now. And so I love that, in opposition to this idea that we chase or that we achieve. We have to go get the thing that's out there somewhere. We have to win it. Because I actually don't think that's the way it works. I think if we are in chase mode, not to say we don't have to work for what we want. I'm just saying, like, if we have this idea that what we want is other than us, like we've already made a separation. Like we're going to talk about duality.
Yes.
We've already created this idea of a duality. Like there's me and my goal, like there's me here in the present moment. And then there's this thing that I want to do in the future. Or maybe you don't even, like you said, you don't even know you want it, but the opportunity like emerges, right? From this, somebody says something to somebody else, and then there it is moving towards you. And you can just say yes or no. Like you can apply for it or not. Like you can respond. So I love this idea of like accepting what's moving towards us and what we already have, and then just accepting like what's moving in. And all we're really doing is kind of filtering, yes, no, like this is right. This is, I'll take that, not this. What do you
And
think of
I think that that's true, but I also, maybe it's that I'm just attached to this idea, but I think for me, I like thinking about what I am like I don't know, maybe this is like the Catholic upbringing thing, but like the God helps those who help themselves thing,
that?
like it's not passive necessarily. It's like you're trusting where the path that you're walking. And
Yes. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I think we were raised in a culture that teaches us that we don't like, we have to look outside of ourselves to like get the thing that we want, right? Instead of looking deep within and being like,
yes,
what can I unlock in myself and then the thing just shows up because it's already moving towards you. And it's just
yes,
like you said, spring break wasn't on my radar because I didn't have the openness, the space, the room in my life to even think about it. It wasn't even a thing. And then when I was like, oh, I actually do have a spring that's open, there's a festival right there that's moving towards me that I can be like, I'm going to go to that. Yeah, it's right there. I didn't have to go chase it. I just had to create space and like allow like an accepting of like, this is where I'm at in my life and this is what I'd like to go do, or like this, I'm open to this new idea or this experience.
I totally have. I feel like there's that whole thing of like the what is the secret or whatever, and it's like I'm gonna get a
Mhm.
gold Cadillac or Lamborghini or whatever, and it's like wait a minute, wait a minute, like there's like this real crunchy part of myself that's like not, it doesn't feel in alignment with that. But what I have experienced in my life, and I think that you have too, is at certain junctures in my life, like the magical things that show up is astounding. And then
Yeah.
if you're just like, oh wow, like I like I could go on for the whole podcast about the wacky stuff that just showed up out of nowhere when the Blue Scorcher was getting started.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and like probably like the most outrageous one, like the a lease that was really like that was kind of crazy. But somebody called up and said, hey, I hear you're starting a place. I happen to have a garage full of restaurant equipment that was abandoned by a past tenant. Would you like it? And that was literally like a $30,000 gift to us to just clean out the garage. And
Mm.
we've got mixers and I mean like totally got the whole kitchen set up like just for moving it out of the garage. And like, but that was like the huge thing, but there were hundreds of tiny things that were like that the right person showing up at just the right moment. And like like I just feel like there's grace. And if
Mm.
you and I think that sometimes it's happening, but we don't recognize it. And so it's more like attuning your radar to like noticing when grace is whatever that is, the universe. I don't know what it is. I'm not gonna, I don't need, it doesn't need to be a guy in a white robe for me, but yeah, like, yeah, rescuing that loon on the story of Megler Bridge and having somebody arrive with a box the very next car. Like, I mean, it's that's a story for another day. But just anyway,
Yeah.
so I I think I like what you are saying about being open to receiving,
Yeah.
and in that there is a benevolence.
Yeah, and I think that the idea, and I'm talking about this at the eclipse because I think about eclipses as like these really extreme moments where, the moon is blocking out the sun and you've got this like, I don't know, like this total illusion that's happening where it's like goes completely dark, right? And then you get this, energetic like reset of like almost a new moon, like a whole lunar cycle happening very quickly at once. Like it's just like so it's showing you like And I think what's powerful about that, it's like it disrupts for me what it's going to do, I think, and it's already doing in my brain. It's like it's disrupting the mindset that we have about how things go. Like, oh, this is how the world works. This is how it looks. All of a sudden we have an event that looks nothing like what we're used to seeing. And it kind of like, but what if, what if everything we thought is happening is kind of like we have this like structure in our head about how it looks, but what if science and the earth and the moon are all doing wilder things than we even understand? So we put them in a carefully like little crafted box of understanding, and then we relate to them from that place. In its sense, the moon is one thing, the sun is one thing, and there's like this polarity, and in that thinking, that duality, and of this like these two things are separate energies, entities, or whatever. But everything's, I mean, the sun is obviously lighting up the moon. It's like it's all the sun, right? But we're, like you said, everything's solar powered. The whole game
Everything.
is solar powered. Not only that, but the sun is very small in comparison to like the whole universe. Like we get in this like idea of what's going on. And I think right now, I think it's just really fun. And we talk about nurture culture, that the entire concept of what we're doing needs to be shooken. It's like a snow
Yes.
globe. Like we need to shake it up and just have people look at it from a completely different angle. Like we need to eclipse the current things we're worrying about, focused on thinking that's the problem, and like talk about, I think the problem is how we're approaching things.
Yes. Yes.
Like it's not about this institution or that person. Yeah, I mean, they can be problematic, but I'm saying like, as long as we make it like, oh, we're over here, and then there's this political party we hate, or this event going on that we're like is horrible, or this, ecological thing that's happening. We're separating ourselves like, oh, but what if it's all just the same? Like we're all on one planet. It's all connected. So what I'm trying to say, like getting too far out, is that it's a paradox, right? And I even brought it back to like, I'm doing a Beltane retreat on May 4th, and Beltane is a big fiery kind of festival at the beginning of May. And within that is kind of built in this idea of male and female and fertility and the summer and the winter. And yet, like, I've been studying Tantra, and Tantra is super interesting because it's really ancient. And it's really different, actually. Like yoga is connected to Tantra. It's like one of the arms that kind of weaves through. But in the West, what we've done is we've taken yoga, and the only part that we really embraced was kind of the part that's about death. And the interesting thing is, because there's this thing in yoga called the yamas, and it's like everything in yourself you don't like, oh, I need to control this, fix this, perfect this, change this energy to this energy. And even like the postures, the asanas, like they're in alignment, like you're trying to like control the body into this like shape and alignment to run energy a certain way. And so Yama is like the god of death, right? So there's all these yamas, like things you want, like, greed and weakness and selfishness and anger, like all these things you're trying to suppress so you can get like lighter and brighter. And so Tantra is actually really connected to nurture culture, I think, because what it's really saying is that you accept everything. There is no resistance to what is. And the illusion of that there is anything that's polar, that there is male and female, it's an illusion. We can't have male without the female. How would you even describe a male if you didn't have female to compare it to, right? Like, or how would you describe the sun or the light if you didn't have darkness? Like if there was just light, you would have no reference point to anything else. So I don't know, I'm going off, but I think it's really interesting because the principle of it is what I was leaning into earlier. It's like a radical acceptance of everything that you're feeling, everything on earth being as it is, and understanding that they're all connected. And so it kind of brings you just back to like, it's, if you're going to hallucinate this reality on a day-to-day basis, why are you choosing like the hallucination that's hurting you? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, why would you choose to like be focused on all the things that you're worried about, you're fearful, that you're angry? You know what I mean? Like, because really they're all this, it's kind of all the same. Am I making any sense at all?
You are actually. And
Okay, help me out.
So when I danced with cancer and 10 years ago, which is, and actually today's the another, like you have all these different, like 10 years since diagnosis, whatever. This was my last chemo treatment, was on April Fool's Day, which I thought was really funny. But a lot of people, when they are cancering, when their body is having that experience, they're really like battling it, or there's a lot of imagery in people's heads of kill it, hate, hating on it. But because of a whole variety of things, that wasn't what I was thinking about. I was really thinking about radically accepting that those cells were still me, and that they were broken, but they were still manically trying to do their job, even though they couldn't. Anyway, like this radical acceptance of what is, was very helpful to me. And I had a kind of a horrible initial prognosis, and I kept thinking, well, I can either be really bummed about it, which I was anyway, but like I could really soak into that, or I could start imagining, because I was like, I can imagine myself well, and if that happens, that's awesome. If it doesn't happen, I was wrong, and I can be miserable later. But I was like, I'd rather be happy now and wrong,
right,
than miserable now and proven right,
absolutely,
be justified. And, again, I don't necessarily think it was anything I did, and this isn't about that experience right now, but just that that was a really, that was huge experience for me, very pivotal. And I think sometimes I fall into worry and about the future in other ways. And it's like, I still think I would rather be happy in the moment and be proven wrong in the future. I mean, not in a Pollyanna way. I don't know. That makes it sound so Pollyanna, because
I'm not talking about Pollyanna. I think that's good that you clarify that. And I'm not actually talking about The Secret either, but the understanding
right.
language around manifestation, because that was taken and really like put in a capitalist American system, and it turned into like a Lamborghini.
Right.
I think that there is an underlying principle that's interesting in there, but let me see what I want to say. Well, I guess what I'm saying is like what you just described was so perfect, because Francis Weller, who's one of the grief teachers that I have read a lot with, and I do the grief rituals that we do here have been connected to his work. He also does like a cancer clinic, and he talks about that very thing. Instead of like all this language of war and battle and like killing it, and they shift the conversation towards like deep compassion and like going in and having like a deep conversations with the cancer, and like, why is it showing up, and like what's going on. And that's not to say like you manifested that, or like all the weird shit that comes out of the New Age movement. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that things happen.
Yes.
And you can choose to respond to them. I mean, you have the power right there to because it's happening. Like, it's an acceptance. And I think I want to separate the accepting from the allowing too, because I think when people hear acceptance, they're like, oh, because I can accept somebody for who they are, and I can even love them, but that doesn't mean I'm going to allow them to hit me in the face.
Correct.
You know what I mean? But I'm also not going to make them a monster and tell them they have to be something else. They can be who they are, and I can accept that they're in the place they are in their life, but I can also, allow myself to walk away and have boundaries and choose my own path. So there is a difference between those two things, and we can do both. I think there's another duality in there. Like, we can't do, like, in the culture, it's like you have to make them horribly wrong and, not allow them to exist.
Correct.
If they're not saying things that make, that feel bad. If they're challenging your beliefs or energy in some way, they're not allowed to do that. But you can still but you can accept them as people. They're allowed to, you can accept that they have the right to, exist and to say those things if they want to, right?
This is totally the kind of the both and paradox. that
Yes.
two things can simultaneously be true. And if you're
They-
too caught in duality, it's an off on switch. It's very binary. And
Mhm.
it's as though there's a right and a wrong, and you're always on that knife edge, ready to be tipped into, the hell or whatever. So
Mhm.
that both and I think one of the reasons it's hard for us in our brains to think in the both and world is I kind of think it is kind of hard to simultaneously experience certain edges, like people don't we can't really experience rage and joy simultaneously, but we have the
Mhm.
capacity for both of them.
Yeah. Like grief and joy are the two. I can think of them as a coin. There's two sides to the coin, but they are the same coin. If
Yes.
we don't allow ourselves to feel grief, we actually compress our ability to feel joy because we're basically disallowing ourselves to feel an emotion. And we're constricting the range of emotions we're letting ourselves feel. You don't get just to constrict the few, like the ones you don't want to feel that are
Right.
negative, right?
Correct.
Or quote unquote negative. Like you just constrict your ability to feel. So only by really to release deeper levels of joy, you have to feel your grief. And this is one of the essential paradoxes. Like the only way out is through it.
Yes.
And same thing with, I think, people who are suffering, like what Francis Weller was saying for cancer. It's like the only way to really be with cancer is to be with it. Like to accept it, to be with it and not to be in a war with it. Um, and so I just see this everywhere in the culture. And I'm just constantly trying to like shake my head and get myself to see the paradoxes instead of the dualities and the polarities that are presented to us over and over. And if you start watching the culture we're in, it's like everything is like it's this or it's that or it's this person or that, and like right or wrong or black or white. And if you could just try to like blink your eyes and like step back a little bit and yeah, and be like, wait, what if that's all the same thing? And what if like that guy couldn't exist if I wasn't this liberal feminist like person, that guy actually couldn't even exist. Like what if it's all, what if we're all the same? Like he's just expressing a different emotion than I, like, what if I'm not allowing something so he's erupting? Like it's so interesting when you start to think of the interconnection between, because then you can accept it. It's all what is. It's like this radical acceptance. Okay, look at it's all happening. And I know I'm not trying to say it's great or that we have to be like, yay, climate change. But I have this little passage I was going to read
Oh, oh.
in a really good book called The Wound Makes the Medicine by Pixie Lighthorse, who I really, really like.
Oh,
And I found this passage. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to read it. It's really
I
short.
love it. Thank you.
Existential guilt and grief for what has happened to our world habitat are bearing down on us every day, along with all the other fears and pressures. There are actions we can take to manage chaos, and there are many things we must surrender our will to change because we lack any power to control them. Avoidance is one extreme, and unsustainable anxiety is the other. The middle path is in knowing when to lean into intentional surrender and organized action. The acute stages of heartbreak. In the acute stages of heartbreak, we have to surrender a lot of control so that we can rest in the process of grief and regrouping our energy. Standing with our suffering and trying to do the next right thing is not helped by swinging between extreme reactions of feeling, all the feelings in a big way, or cutting them off altogether. And I see that for me, that just like resonated really strongly about how we are in this culture. And also, yeah, there's this if we're going to make change, if we want things to change, I think there needs to be a deeper level of acceptance about where we're at.
Which is the messy middle.
Very messy. And like I said, not to a lot. I mean, it's okay to take organized action to change things, but I guess it's going to sound weird, but it's almost like it's not out there. it's like an allowing that starts to happen in here. And then we see the change around us emerging. Like we don't even notice the possibilities for nurture culture, for changing this culture, if we're so wrapped up in like seeing ourselves in opposition to what is right now. Does that make sense?
That, yes, because it's like
Because we're in it. We're in
we're
nurture
in
culture.
it. Yes, that
It's
is,
not
yes,
something we're trying to go get.
yes. And but if you're what you're focused on, then, I mean, how often have you heard like a news, and they have two sides. They always have these two sides, even though there's actually infinite sides, one.
Mhm.
And two, by trying to always have a balanced viewpoint, they're actually invalidating the most probably the most in alignment with life option,
Mhm.
or that sounds kind of convoluted, but yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
for example, what I'm trying to say is I'm taking it from like, if you, let's say just like loving the cancer, or not loving it, accepting it, right? Like, okay, I'm going to work with the cancer. I'm not going to be in a war
Yeah.
with it, make myself miserable. It's such a perfect analogy. Then you look at a clear cut. Okay, let's just go and look
Yes.
at clear cutting.
Yes.
Now, we could look at that and be like, that's cancer and it's horrible and we have to change it and we have to, and there's a lot of truth. Like, I mean, people, I'm not trying to say it's great. I'm not trying to be like, woo, clear cuts. But when we see it as opposition, like when we see it as like, that is the problem, instead of being like, that's what is, it's
Yes.
happening. It's a part of the world I live in. This is a part of what I'm creating. Whether I cut it down or not, like it's a part of my reality. It's there. And if I sit with it and like radically kind of accept that it is a part of what's going on right now, then how does that shift how I move towards, nurturing a space for that to look different, be different, or maybe just be, without seeing it as separate from the healing of the culture and the planet. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's just a part of it. And I'm not trying to congratulate all of us for creating clear cuts. I'm just saying that I'm just saying, like, I think that there's something about the mentality, and I'm using this eclipse to kind of, it's like a shadow we won't look at. It's like, because it's so painful, because it's big, because it's scary, we won't be with it. But
we want
without
to
some,
we want to push it. We want to push
and
it.
we also want to blame and make it wrong and like make it about something else. And that, I'm picking the one example that I have that would be the hardest ones for me to accept. Okay. Cause
Yeah.
it's a hard one for my heart. And the thing is, it can be hard for you. Like cancer is not like, again, we don't have to love these things, right? Accepting is even not even allowing. Like there's places where we might not allow trees to get cut down, but there is this is what's going on. And I don't think I think the reason we can't really create this, where everyone's struggling so hard to create something new and get the system to change, is because we're still in the system, in this idea that the way you create change is through this polarity, this duality of like, we're good, you're this, back and forth, instead of just everybody like realizing like, oh, these are all expressions of what is right now.
Yes.
And I know this is kind of crazy and radical, but this is my eclipse talk. If you back up into this idea of like deep acceptance to all things that are manifesting right now as is, like, even if it looks cancerous on the planet, I mean, isn't that a part of like what we're experiencing it? Like we have it. It's in our body. It's like, it is the body of the earth right now. It's what's going on.
And and I think it's by pushing it away, instead of that deep acceptance, it somehow, I don't
Well, we
know.
can't grieve
We
it. If we're
can't,
pushing it,
yes.
yeah, we can't feel it. We can't grieve it. We can't connect with it. We can't even understand it. Like at a certain level, like even understand like the pieces that need to heal, or be accepted in ourselves that would even create something that looks like that. Because if we think that we're not a part of the American system that's creating that, I think it's a little delusional.
Yeah.
We like to think we're not because, whatever, I don't have a chainsaw in my hand. That doesn't mean, it's not an expression of the system I'm in.
I think it's kind of like, I have a friend who's Buddhist, and she was talking about like the different realities all are all coexisting. And
Mm-hmm.
we were literally walking down the sidewalk, and I was like, we were talking about it, and I was like asking her questions and trying to understand it. And it was perfect because we were going to cross the street. So we're at the stoplight, and at the stoplight, all the cars kind of stop, right? And there's a big monster truck completely encased with mud because they've been, driving around in some wetlands somewhere. And there's like a super fancy Jaguar. And there was like, a mom with like 4 kids. And like, she's like, all of those, she's like, there it is right there. They all are, and all at the same moment, but they're all in very different realities. And we're right next to them. Like,
Yeah.
if they rolled down their window, we could talk to them, but we're in a different reality. And sometimes I think about that when I see someone and they're expressing themselves in a way that I don't understand. And I'm just like, oh, but here we are. We're all here in the same place still. Like, yeah, I don't know if that's.
No, it is. It's like, can I love that? Can I love that this is weird? Can I love that I don't understand you? Yeah, I mean, because I think when I drive past clear cuts, let's go back to that example. Like, it's hard for me to look at them. It's hard. I shut down. There's a part of myself I feel like has to become a little numb.
It's shocking. It's and, especially when it's a forest that you've walked through. It's like, it's deeply distressing.
But there's so many things. And that's the thing, is we have little rectangles in our pocket that are just feeding us distressing. I mean, there's just a never ending stream, right? So how do we how do we be in that soup of all of it and experience it in a way that's not not separate from us, but be like, yeah, I'm in it, I'm part of it. So how from within do I create change? Like from in it, not from like, oh, we're going to do this other thing out there. We're trying to get to this other place, or we're going to try to change these people to think the way we want to think, or think of all the strategies that are going on right now it's all about control. It's like, can we give death to this one thing and control it so it looks like this? And it's kind of going back to that whole idea of the yamas and like yoga and like the part that the West embraced, because it left out Tantra. And Tantra is this like, it's not just about sex and pleasure. That's the other piece that the West took on. It's like, oh, it's about sex. It's actually it really is nurture culture. The more I read about it, the more I'm like, oh, this is it. This is what we're talking about. Like, it is about feeling everything, like really allowing and receiving. So it's not about, and it's definitely the paradox, 100% the paradox. Like, what you think is oppositional, what you think is, it's not. It's like one big connected expression of life. And if you embrace and allow all of it, you embrace and allow all of yourself. And within that is like your greatest source of power and pleasure and joy and manifestation. And that's kind of what I was going to. So it's hard to do because there's ugly, horrible, scary, I mean, there's all these parts that are going on that we want to make wrong and control it, but we're wasting a lot of energy, one, because we really can't, we can't control them at all. And we're also spending a lot of time, like in that passage I read, in horrible anxiety, and we're swinging back and forth between the two, where you said the messy middle is like, this was going on, and from right here, what am I doing? Like, what's going on with me? It's allowing all parts of myself as well. If you allow all parts of everybody else's self and what's happening, then you can accept, yourself in there too.
Do you think part of it, I have 2 thoughts. One is like, when you try to contemplate all of it all together, it's super overwhelming. And I think that's where we go to that shutdown place.
Mm-hmm.
But when we instead, or when I instead kind of acceptance is part of acceptance, I think for me is accepting that I, in my human limitations, can't hold it all and can't observe it all.
Right.
It is beyond me. And so it's like, instead of going that gerbil wheel of like, why,
Yeah.
which I, and like, why, like that, instead just being like, it's, like part of releasing it is realizing I don't have to understand it all.
You can't.
But you can't,
absolutely
because
can't.
you can't. And then the second thing is the power of, it's kind of like, it's like the possibility game of, what if it's not how I think it is?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yes.
It's not how you think it is.
It's not how you think it is. And so it's like,
exactly.
but you want to argue with it, right?
Yes.
Like you want to argue with it and you're up in your head. And instead, if you're just saying, well, I'm pretending that it's this way, or what if it is that way? And just, I had a therapist in my 20s that said this thing, and I had kind of, I've got a significant A score, and she's like, well, what if in some way you picked your family? Why would you have picked them? And it wasn't saying you did, and this is how the universe works. It was just like an exercise, a thought game. And that just totally changed everything for me. That looking at it from that different perspective, and it was like, oh, I can see what, that would have been worth it, or this aspect or that aspect. And I think, so it's like, but if I had tried to, I don't know, it's like giving yourself permission to not know and to ask questions that don't have a clear answer, but that can expand the sample space enough that your perspective has room to shift and change.
If we're in this, yeah, that's it. You just said it. Like, that's exactly right. And I think how un-American that sounded. I mean, if you really, that what you just said is like, I think if you get into Eastern philosophy, we're speaking their language, right? But in the West, that is like not what we're trained to do, not what we want to believe. We want to believe we have control over it. We want to believe that if we effort, like you said at the very beginning, like you want to earn your lunch or whatever you said, like we believe that's a thing, And like I said, there's nothing wrong with any of those beliefs. You're allowed to have any belief you want. I mean, really, whatever works for you. Yes, we are not designed as humans to incorporate the vastness of the universe and all the mysteries. Like, no, we're just a little speck. We have to pick our little point and focus on it so we can get through our coffee and our day or whatever. I get that. I'm not, so on a podcast is where we have an opportunity to play with these ideas. I'm not saying that we're all going to walk around like, what? I'm also not saying that we are just going to surrender to whatever happens. Like, because again, there's this acceptance, and then there's also the allowing. You can not allow, you can choose. You have choice here, and you can do things. You have agency. But if, like you said, just beautifully, if this is all an illusion, okay, if this is all made up, and like any idea of separation or these polarities, dualities, is just like our brain having to categorize things so we don't go insane. Great. Pick your illusion. Like, why choose something that feels horrible and hard and stressful? And, you can pick. You do have that choice. Like, create a hallucination that works for you. Like, because we're kind of hallucinating all the time, our experience of what we think is reality. So I think this comes back to that idea of this eclipse. Like, what I wanted to talk about, this weird concept during the eclipse show, was that sometimes we have these moments in life that do shake us like an eclipse, like a big event. We get really sick, or our partner walks out on us, or our business collapse, or we almost die, and then we like, whoa, what have I been doing with my life? Right. That is like the energy of this eclipse. And I also want to say that it's conjunct Chiron, which is the wounded healer in astrology. So this is about how your wound has been altering your hallucination of life, your experience, your reality. And this is an opportunity to question that. Like, you're going to, I think everyone listening to this, it's whether you believe it or not, some opportunity is already moving towards you to show you, if you have space to observe it and receive it, it's already moving into your sphere. It's already there, that what you thought was the biggest wound could be your actually biggest healer, biggest gift to humanity. And that's what I'm trying to say. If the wounds of a culture that we're in might be the biggest gifts for us to grow and nurture something more beautiful that we want to see. And when we reject what's happening, we miss that opportunity.
Yes.
Hopefully that makes sense. I know that it's a little weird. Like, you really have to be like, wait, but I thought I hated that. I thought I hated all that stuff. Yeah, you do. And that's okay. You can make it, you're having a human response. Like, you're having a normal human response to injustice, for example, to Palestine. Just pick one. I'm not going to dwell on any one. We could pick anything out of the news and be like, whoa, your anger, your feeling of sorrow, that's you being a good, normal human with a real heart. However, lean in. Like, if anything, like, lean into the grief, lean into, if you're going to, and it's okay to that it's happening and it's in your body, like, yet you're grieving it, and that you can't control it either. Like, let's face it, we're not going to be able to control that situation from where we're sitting in our comfy little homes. So I think that there's this way where we shut down, we numb out, we say, like, that's horrible that they're doing this thing. And it is. But like, when we don't accept that this is this is what's happening, and grieve it, and kind of like, this is a part of humanity right now. This is what we're going through. We are not separate from anything that's happening on the planet. And girl, if you can't handle that, turn your phone off. Like, it's okay too. You know what I mean? To like, if it's overwhelming, if it's spiraling you into a reality that it's so overwhelming and dark that you're not being able to do anything, then I think it's okay to
step back
and remember that we're all having this crazy experience called life, and it's through this woundiness that we're being agitated. The new thing is emerging. The wound is the medicine somehow.
Yes.
You don't have to understand it. You don't even have to know how, but like, I'm just going to put that forth. Like, the wound is not something that we are like, oh my God, this is the most horrible thing ever. What if the wound is what we have to turn towards and lean into personally and culturally and like as humanity? That's my little TED talk for today.
I think it's pretty right on. Very roomy, right?
Thank you. Yes. I guess I wanted to get that one. I won't do this at every podcast, but I wanted to get that one out. I think it's cosmic enough of an event to like drop that on y'all. And if you can't, I mean, if it's okay too, if you're just like, I have no idea what she's on about. That's okay. But I think you've listened to it, so now there's already a little bubble that's
a little question. The question is, what if it's neither good nor bad? What if it just is?
What if there is no good or bad?
What if there is no good or bad? There is what there is.
Yeah, that's all.
And it's just like, I not like you have to have the definitive answer to that, because then you're like in this like,
no.
Yeah, it's immobilizing, but it's like, what does that space feel like where there is no good or bad?
It's just what is. And realize the ego hates this, because the ego wants to know and wants to be moral and wants to be right and wants to be working. You know what I mean? Like, so that's very like, that's why it's so hard. That's why I said it's anti-American. It's really hard to just like let all that go for a minute and be like, but what if that's, you know, there really isn't anything. And the freedom that comes up from that, I think, allows us to shift our perspective about what's going on. And I think we need a big perspective shift to heal this, because this whole battling around this is right, this is wrong, it's this president or this president, blah, it's like, no, can we see that doesn't work? We're trapped in the thought form that created this thing. So we have to like step outside and see the paradox we're in order to change it.
Whoa!
And with that, enjoy the solar eclipse, everyone. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Thank you so much, Iris. I'm going to leave it there. That was kind of,
Yeah,
this would be a really short one, and we actually made it kind of long, but I know when you hear this, I'll be in Texas, so who knows what's going on. Might even get weirder when I get back. Thank you, everyone. I love you all. Enjoy the paradox of life. And if you want to come to my weird retreats, then with my weird philosophies, I do have my Beltane retreat is up. It's on May 4th. Saturday, and we're going to be doing a lot of this tantric non-duality, and it's around shame. We're going to be releasing our bodies from shame, and the idea that shame and pleasure are kind of intertwined, so it'll be really interesting. And I also have a big community grief retreat I just put up too, so that's going to be in June. So a lot of grieving work, and because that's the whole idea of this, is you lean in to these big emotions, and then through that we heal and we come out. Yeah. And everything looks different once we can move some of those big emotions. And
I would say a resounding yap to events at North Fork. One, because of your skilled facilitator, but also the land itself and what it offers to that experience is non-trivial.
Thank you. Yeah. I am very grateful for the space that we inhabit here. And I'm also really grateful to get away and go see something else, because I feel like I've been living in a little anthill and seeing all my little ants in my community over and over and over again. And I'm losing my mind. So I just want to go see some Texas ants and see some new stuff.
Have a fantastic time.
Thank you. Happy eclipse, everybody. We'll talk to you again.
Bye-bye.